I'm going to do roll call.
Mm-hmm.
Brenda? Brenda Hupka?
Well, maybe not. Did we, Nancy, did you have anybody signed up for public comment?
No, I did not, but I see
okay.
Brenda's in.
Oh, there I see, yeah.
Brenda, are you on the line? We'll come back. Carson?
Present.
Cheryl Stewart?
I'm here.
Christine Brinker? Oh, hold on. She's here. I got to bring her in. Hold on. She keeps moving on me. And here's...
Can you hear me? Hi, it's Christine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Am I on video too?
You will be in just one moment. Yep. Okay, so we have Christine and Dane. Dane, you're on
Present. Hi.
Thank you. I know it's hard. Felicia? Felicia, are you there? Okay. Jeff?
Here.
Kanji?
Here.
Marcy? I know Marcy's here because we were talking earlier.
Can anybody hear Brenda now? Can anybody hear Brenda now?
Somebody's phone is ringing. Brenda, are you on the line?
Yes, now you can hear me. Yes,
Now I can hear. That's okay. Good. Now we're to Marcy. Okay. Matt?
Here.
I'm here.
Okay. Thank you, Marcy. And Steve.
Hello.
And has Felicia joined the line yet? Okay. And then Director DeAndrea.
Here.
Okay. So the only one I'm missing is
I
Felicia.
turned my video off.
Okay.
Okay. So, thank you for that, Nancy.
Sorry
so-
for the confusion.
No problem. I do see, so the next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone on the line? I do see 3 people with phone numbers with no names, but is there any public comment tonight?
I know Marcy and Cheryl have called in.
Okay.
I'm not sure who the third person is.
Yeah, so I just want to verify in case somebody wants to provide public comment. Okay.
Well, hold on, Maria. If nothing else, there's definitely outstanding questions that I sent about a month ago that you haven't responded to. So I don't know if now is the appropriate time to have those asked, or if we're going to have separate from public time to ask questions.
Yeah, we can get into that with the agenda here. So I'll take this time for anyone not on the committee.
Okay.
Seeing none? Okay. So then we'll move to new business, which is to review the proposals. And so what we're going to spend the majority of our time tonight is to talk through the proposals. And basically what I'd like to do come out of this meeting tonight is a list of questions for either one or both of the proposers that we would send to them so that they can respond in writing. And then I'd like to talk also about, do we want to have an in-person or like on a Zoom meeting like this discussion with them to follow up on with any questions and just have a dialogue basically. so that we can have a back and forth in terms of, just walking through their proposals and hearing from them directly, maybe even giving them time, like a 15-minute presentation, and then we can follow up with additional questions that might be outstanding. So that would be our first order of business. But Carson, do you want to jump in there and there were some additional questions that I haven't answered yet?
Yeah. Well, in our last meeting, you told us about the meeting with the companies that were doing the proposals, and you said you'd send us, notes on what was discussed. And I asked again about that, and all we got was a list of who was there. Is there any notes or recording about what happened in that meeting?
For the pre-proposal meeting,
Yeah.
or okay, no, that was it.
Can you just kind of tell us then what occurred in that meeting, what was discussed?
Yeah, so there was an agenda which I sent to you. It was just basically an overview of the RFP.
Oh, okay.
And so then they asked a couple of questions, and then we provided answers in writing. So it was very limited interaction. It was more just kind of city staff kind of hitting the highlights of the RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've got several more questions.
Okay.
So, let's see. Are there any, besides the ones I sent, are there other questions that were sent to you by committee members that you haven't responded to yet?
I don't believe so. So I've gotten questions from Christine, from Kanji, and from Marcy. And so what I was going to suggest is maybe put those all together back to you, to all of the entire committee.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, you started on that with this, what's in the agenda, the tipping fees, composting, overhead wires, that was answering some of the questions we've asked, right?
Mm-hmm. Those were more from our last meeting.
Okay.
But I can certainly, because I've done it in writing to everybody, so it'd be really easy for me to compile those and send those out even tomorrow.
Okay. So the three people you mentioned, they sent you questions and you responded in writing to them?
Yes.
Why
Yeah,
did
I
you ignore
sent
all of
some-
my questions?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you send me an email? Okay,
Several.
let me just check. Okay.
Including I specifically requested that you distribute to the committee the materials I provided you that were relevant to our discussion.
So the last email or exchange that we had was about the rescheduling. That was in mid-July, or excuse me, mid-August, August 12th. Before that, I don't have anything.
Okay, I'll forward it to you. Yeah, I sent it on July 22nd.
Okay.
And asked several questions.
I'm sorry.
I'll just
Okay.
ask them now. So,
Mm-hmm.
on the addendum number 1, how and why was the decision made to make it required for citizens to pay for recycling regardless of their use of the service?
I think the intent was that, we want to encourage people to recycle, and for somebody to opt out, it would be logistically very difficult. So people can choose not to have a recycling bin, and you may have seen some of this in Republic Services bid, that they even want to charge like an administrative fee, even if somebody opts out of all the service. We didn't put that on the table. But if somebody's just going to have a recycling bin and they're not going to use it for recycling, I think the logistics of that are very difficult to manage. And so that's why we went with that they still have to pay for that.
But who is making these decisions to answer the questions that way?
City staff.
So as far as requiring citizens to pay for services they're not using, and the other thing you told us in the last meeting, we were going to be discussing admin fees in this meeting. I don't know when you want to hit on that, but you mentioned that you were going to be charging fees to people even if they opt out of the whole service. So I'm interested in what the admin fees are and what if someone opts out of this whole thing, what are we saying we're making citizens have to pay for nothing?
So the admin fee would cover basically management of the system. So staff resources, to putting together the communication pieces and the mailing of that, or the outreach associated with recycling and garbage. So again, it'd be logistically difficult to not send it to all those people, whoever's on that list. So everybody would get those mailings or whatever we did. And so there's still a management cost associated with managing that account, even if they opt out. So that was our.
And what are we talking? How much money? You're saying that whatever we decide we charge a citizen for full trash and recycling, they're going to have to pay whether they use it or not, or some subset of that? And how much is that subset?
So they would need, so we did include an opt-out program is the idea right now. So if you want to go and choose some other provider, we would want to see proof of that so that you have an invoice or a bill or something like that, but that so you wouldn't have to pay for garbage and recycling through the city, but that you would show that you have that service and you're paying it. So you're not just using your neighbor's garbage can or not having any service, but you would still pay that admin fee and that to the city each month or for.
Carson, can I just interject here for a minute? Because I really don't understand, if we opt out, why are we being charged an administrative fee? I just don't understand the reasoning behind that. We are not using the one trash hauler, and I don't think it's fair that citizens have to pay for something they are not using.
You can make that recommendation to not do it that way then as a group.
And is
can I just jump in and emphasize that we haven't even reviewed these proposals yet, or made any decision whatsoever. So I don't think any decision's been made to charge anyone for anything.
Well, the answer was put in the addendum that the city would be charging people for recycling regardless of whether they use it. And I'm responding to that. I mean, that wasn't something put before us to discuss. It was just answered to the proposers. And, you know, right now, there's no requirement for a citizen in the municipal code that I'm aware of to even pay for a service. And there's plenty of people who go to the dump regularly and as part of their job and could take their own trash to the dump and not want to opt into this. And I feel like it's overly unreasonable to expect people to have to pay any admin fee for anything that they're not utilizing. I mean, I know that there's a lot of people who aren't going to like that just from a freedom standpoint. And personally, I'll use it. You know, I'll use both. I have more recycling than trash, but I am thinking about the people who are not going to be happy with this. And the way that, you know, where I'm coming from is I want to make sure that whatever decisions we make are the best for the citizens. And to me, that is not a reduction in service, an improvement in service, and not an increase in cost, but existing level of cost or less, since the city has the leverage to get something and not, you know, just giving things away. So that's always where I'm going to be coming from, is trying to utilize the fact that we're a city making a huge deal, that we can utilize that power to have leverage to get the best deal for the citizens. And when we're telling people they have to pay for things they're not using, that's not going to make people happy. And okay, that's.
Can I just jump in, guys?
Yeah.
So one thing I was thinking, though, is if we, you know, one of the big things that if we start having people being able to opt out of garbage or opt out of recycling and all those sort of things, all of a sudden now we don't become as good of a negotiating, because all of a sudden, you know, whoever it is, Republic Waste Management says, well, geez, we're only going to get 80% of these people. We're practically at 60% already. What do we care? You know, we can still charge them up the wazoo, whatever we want, you know, and my year to year trash bill goes up by 10% sometimes by Waste Management. And I have to call them back and be like, what the hell? Why are you charging me so much? You know, one of the big things about us having this service altogether is that we do say, yes, we're going to do garbage, and yes, we're going to do recycling for everybody, so that Waste Management, Republic, whoever it is, would say, this is totally worth it to us to charge them less. So maybe we can go back to them and say, hey, we're not willing to pay $18 a month, but we're willing to pay $14 a month. And they go, okay, if you can guarantee us 97%, we're willing to take that. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And I doubt hardly anybody other than people that, like I said, go to the dump all the time for their work would, like, who's going to want to opt out of trash? But the fact that a lot of people don't want to deal with recycling and charging them for it, I can see claiming that it's a difficult thing to manage, but it's not that difficult. And I know that there's a lot of resistance to being charged for things. And I honestly want this to go through. I want us to have a good deal and have this service with pickup in the alley for waste and recycling, and and have it all go through and be a good deal for the citizens. I just know that there's going to be resistance, and I don't think we should be building in from the beginning things that are going to cause a lot of people to feel resistance, and that's all.
There seems to be
If I
several
could-
issues all tied up in there. I counted maybe 3 or 4, so maybe we could take them in turn. And I think your main one was about just the simple admin fee for people that opt out. Another is should they have to pay for recycle if they're not recycling. Another is people who want to go to the dump instead. And so those are all probably separate discussions if I followed that chain right. The last one, I don't know that we want to get the option out of having any trash whatsoever because of the risk of just taking it to the apartment dumpster and dumping it in there, or putting it in your neighbor's trash or in the park trash cans. And that seems like a real risk for abuse. So I think it's rare that people would take it to the dump themselves, and more likely that they would kind of abuse the system. So that one of those 3 issues I thought I would come in on first, as something that I don't think we would want that to be allowed.
It's currently allowed, though. So that would be creating something. I assume, Maria, the plan is to put something in the municipal code to make it to where you can't opt out of this required service without providing this bill?
Currently, you have to provide garbage or service. You have to buy service of some sort. I can't remember the exact wording, but
do you know where that is in the code?
Yes, it is.
Do you know where?
I'll find it and include it. I'll send a response. But it is required that each property owner have trash service and pick up on a weekly basis. But it doesn't say anything about recycling.
Okay.
Is there something that I could...
15-7-3, paragraph B. Every occupant or owner of real property shall remove or cause the removal of all accumulations of trash from such property and shall subscribe to a trash removal service with a licensed trash hauler, and pending the removal, shall place the same in a trash container kept for that purpose.
Cool. Thank you, Member Ward. That makes sense. I just wanted to voice all that. I know that there's still going to be resistance to admin fees and recycling fees that they don't utilize.
Okay, Mark.
The resistance might depend on the amount too, which I don't think we know. If it's a couple bucks, probably not as much resistance. If it's 6 or 8, then a lot more resistance. I don't know if we know what the total is going to be, but there's a spectrum there. I was thinking of it, you make a good point. I was thinking of it similar to how we have all our other utilities, like how Excel charges me fixed charges for my electricity and my gas, in addition to a variable rate based on how much I actually use. But their fixed charge is basically saying you're part of a community and we need to cover kind of all of those costs, regardless of if you use it or not. And the only way to get out of it is, I mean, you could go off grid, but that's not really an option for trash. So that's kind of the analogy I was using. But again, I really think it depends on the amount that it comes out to be. We probably will get some pushback on that, and how much just depends on if it's a couple bucks or if it's a lot more than that.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, excuse me, but I believe Marcy's raised her hand to speak.
Yeah.
So Marcy, go ahead.
I don't know why. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. My phone keeps saying I'm muted, so I don't understand what's going on. But I did want to respond to Dane's remark about if you get 80% or 90% involved in this one trash hauler. But right now, did the graph that I received not show that 70% of Inglewood citizens are happy with their trash pickup? And so why would they want to get into a program that is probably more expensive with the administrative fee and all the other fees attached to either Republic or Waste Management, when today I just got a flyer from Waste Services that says it's $16 a month, 2-year rate guarantee, and that seems like a pretty good deal to me. That is the flat rate. There are no other fees attached unless you want to recycle. So I guess my question is, why would people want, if 70% are happy with their trash service, what is the reason we're doing this?
Well,
I
I think
remember that we talked about that at the last meeting, and some of us were saying, like, I responded that I'm okay with my trash service. They're doing fine, but I am also totally willing to look to see if we could get a better deal on it, both in terms of price and in terms of increasing our recycling rate and reducing the taxes we spend on road wear and tear, the effects we have on air quality and so forth. So I'm happy with them. I didn't mark that I was unhappy, but I think that alone, that one poll question, maybe just didn't flesh out the entire story.
Okay.
You could be happy with something, but also still always be looking for something better.
Yeah, I'm looking at the right now, and it says it's very satisfied to very dissatisfied, and it says 20.9% very satisfied, 42.7% satisfied. The rest would be dissatisfied. But then, interestingly, it says 78. Would you be more likely to recycle if the service was included in an overall garbage program? 78.9% yes. Wow. And then would you be supportive of a change to a one service provider for the entire city? 76.2% yes. Granted, unscientific, but there's
Way
so
unscientific.
satisfied but supportive of a change.
Okay, and Kanji has his hand up to speak.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Jeff and Christine that I think we're getting ahead of ourselves right now because we don't even have the apples to apples comparison that we can do across what we're talking about. So I think what we do from an RFP perspective is lay out those scenarios that Christine is talking about, that Carson had said, like these different scenarios, and then we look those across the board as far as like public service, waste management, and then just maintaining our own service, just so that we can get that perspective. I think that would guide this conversation a little bit more.
That makes sense. Should I ask my next question? So I'm still not totally clear on the tipping fee structure and what is being referred to that when you guys refer to tipping fee. If Inglewood does not own the dump, right?
That's correct.
So Inglewood is charging what they're calling a tipping fee for the waste and recycling going through Inglewood, but then there's other fees that are being paid to actually dump it at the dump, which is what is usually called a tipping fee. Is that right?
My understanding is that every load that goes to the Oxford Waste Station, which is in Inglewood, is charged a fee of 50 cents per cubic yard, and that returns back to the city to be used for, and it goes just into the general fund.
And then
typically that's called out for like road maintenance, but in this case, in our case, it is not.
But then there's additional fees that have to be paid for the actual dumping?
Yes.
And do you know, does the dump call that tipping fees?
I'm not sure. Yeah, but obviously Waste Management receives money for disposing then of that waste. What they charge that, or what they call that, I'm not 100% sure. What we call tipping fees is our fee for being with, using the roads within the city of Inglewood.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe they call it tipping fees, but I understand, yeah, the confusion and the semantics there.
And then on the the price increase, what would the 3% be calculated against? The entire fee, including the admin fee, or just the portion of it that's waste and recycling? That 3% increase. I mean, do we know what that's calculated against?
For like the company that we'd hire?
The built-in increase in cost.
Yeah. The CPI would be on their rate. So I think it was $15.45 for, I believe that was the waste management price. So it'd be 3% on top of that would be, or the CPI, whichever is lower, would be the maximum amount that they could charge.
What's CPI?
Consumer Price Index. It's a published
right.
rate for different metro areas. So I called out the Denver metro area. So it's a published rate that basically tries to anticipate or accommodate how much prices are raising or decreasing in that particular metro area.
Besides the obvious goals we've all discussed, I mean, environmental, fewer trucks, reduction of, wear on the streets and alleys, potential increase in service by getting alley service, potentially a better deal cost-wise. Is the city viewing this or trying to utilize this as a revenue generation tool in any way?
Not at all. So this would be considered just self-sufficient. So there would be, we want to try and get to as close to break even as possible. So again, whether it's the admin fees or whatever, we want the program to pay for the program, and hopefully there should be minimal subsidization from whatever that word is, subsidy from the city, but certainly not that there's some sort of revenue generation that goes back to the city at all. So, again, this is an initiative. I keep calling it that because it really is. We're debating, is this a good thing for the city or not? And it's certainly not about the revenue from the city perspective. From the homeowners, yes, that could be a potential benefit.
And then I guess this is kind of related to that admin fee. I was confused on Addendum 1, question 12, why the answer was no, when it seemed like that was asking if there was going to be an opt-out fee. Is that no to say that the city's going to charge the citizen the admin fee and keep it and not pass that on at all to the provider? Is that why that answer was no?
Yes.
What was the question?
In Addendum 1, question 12, the question is there a monthly recurring cost to residents that opt out? And the answer was no. But I guess that, like what I just asked, is the reason that's no is because that cost would not be passed on to the provider. It would be held by the city.
Correct. So the whether you opt in or opt out, the hauling company will not see a portion of any of that admin fee.
So it's just the city?
Yep, it's just to run the program.
Okay, could I just ask a quick question because it was brought up by Carson, but at the last meeting, Maria, you said that this program would not go into effect until the summer of 2021 because whoever is awarded this between the two companies, that they would have to buy more trucks. So I guess where I'm confused at is if they have to buy more trucks, then that means the same amount of traffic on the roads and alleys that we already have, and they will also, from my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that they will be picking up 5 days a week in Inglewood, not on Wednesdays or, 2 days, I think it is now. So how does that save on our roads and alleys? I guess I'm trying to understand that.
Sure. So they may or may not have to buy new trucks. And that's part of that time period between if we select a contractor and when we would implement. Part of that also though is communications and logistics of getting the new containers out to people, informing them about, you know, that this new service is here and that you have to participate in all of that and how it affects the utility bills. There will be a lot of communication and education that will be needed. If they have to buy, you know, trucks, that's also a time frame, or would be within that time frame, and you can't just buy those off the shelf, as you can imagine. They will have a Monday through Friday schedule, and they would propose that to us, and it would likely be, you know, 5 different areas of the city that they would break up into probably roughly equal size areas or number of households. And then they would provide that map to us, and it would be date certain. So on your block, for example, you might be every Thursday, but we would only service 1/5 roughly of the city each day. And so the trucks that come from the other providers would no longer be on the streets.
Okay.
Also, a hauler
Can I confirm that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
a hauler that's running more trucks isn't necessarily going to be running all those extra trucks down the same road.
Yeah.
So right now we have, you know, 5 haulers running through Inglewood, and they all run down the same road every trash collection day.
Mm-hmm.
So more trucks does not necessarily mean more traffic.
Mm-hmm. Christine, did you have a comment?
Yeah, Stephen said what I was going to say.
Okay. Marcy, does that answer your question?
Well, kind of. I mean, right now in my neighborhood, I don't see what they're saying about all these trucks running down our neighborhoods, because I don't see that in my neighborhood. And I don't know if that's true or false. So I'm just going to leave that alone.
Okay.
I mean, I can say I work from home, and I have a view of the street and alley from where I sit, and I see trucks all day long, tons of them. There are tons of trucks from a bunch of companies hitting the same pavement every trash day. So it would be less trucks. It would definitely be better for the environment. I don't think that's really a question.
Same here. I see a bunch of them.
Same here.
Same here.
So Brenda has raised her hand, wants to make a comment. Brenda, you're muted. Brenda, we can't hear you.
You can hold the space bar, Brenda.
Not
Maybe
muted. Her
there's
mic's
another
not connected.
Mute, yeah.
Is there a chat
Maybe
feature
try-
with Zoom?
Did you call in as well, Brenda? You might be muted. If you did, you might be muted on your phone.
Let's try this. Maybe she's my other caller. Nope, she's going to have, if it is, she's going to have to unmute. I can't unmute the person.
So on the screen,
I
Brenda,
think-
in the lower left-hand corner by the audio controls, there's a little drop-down for mute where you can adjust which microphone you're using and test your audio. So you can do that now, and we'll get back with you.
Or I've had to hit *6 to get unmuted.
It says I'm unmuted. Am I echoing?
You are.
I think you get an echo when you're on the phone and computer both.
That's
Yeah,
correct.
you gotta pick one audio source.
I'm embarrassed. Oh, can you hear me now? Or is it still? Technical difficulties. I'm sorry, I'll have to work out my technical difficulties.
Yeah, you gotta have one muted.
Well, if I hang up, I won't hear you.
Is there a chat feature, Director, on the Zoom, on your Zoom?
There is not.
Okay.
Can
I mean,
she?
if nothing
can she
else,
type
maybe
out her
she could
question
send an
too?
email with her question.
At least for now, but we'll get it worked out.
Maybe somebody could email her some Zoom technical tips.
I'll reach out to her right now. I'll send her an email.
And maybe Brenda, you want to sign back out of both, like hang up the computer and the phone and try to sign back in and with just one of them and see if that helps. We'll miss you. We'll nominate you for chair while you're gone.
In the interest of time, does it make sense for us to start reviewing some of these proposals? And I feel like a lot of these questions will come up throughout that process.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, let's look at actual stuff.
Okay.
I have one more question that I think in general, it's a general one and I think it would be helpful. Does the city have the proposals in a searchable format rather than just an image?
No.
So you guys received them
I could ask for that.
Okay. And then also anything you can send us in a searchable format, that would be really nice. Like I would like to have the RFP in a searchable format.
I was able to convert my PDF to be searchable. I don't know if I have a different PDF program than you or something.
I probably have a really old version of it.
Maybe I could send you mine and see if it ends up searchable. But I go over to that right-hand side, and then somewhere in the sidebars is recognized text.
Sure.
And I went through all of them.
Yeah, I knew it's possible to convert it, but
yeah.
I mean, they started with it in a format that would have been searchable. I'm just asking that when you send us documents, if possible, please send them to us in a searchable form.
Okay.
Thank you.
That conversion requires Acrobat Pro, just by the way, Christine.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's what I have. I'm a pro.
All right. So yes. So hopefully our mission tonight and our outcome is that we'll develop a list of questions for each provider. I'm assuming since we only have two that there's interest in reaching out to both of them, but that would be an initial question. Is you want to talk further with both proposers or just one? But that my goal would be is that we develop a list of questions, again, that would be sent to each provider. They would answer them in writing, and then we'd schedule a time in a meeting similar to this on Zoom where we could interview them individually, of course, and then ask them further follow-up questions and have them give us an overview of their proposal. Was that acceptable as an approach?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there interest in pursuing or discussing with both proposers?
Have both, one thing that wasn't clear to me by going through both, have both agreed to provide waste and recycling in the alley?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think there's some nuances as we'll talk that, we'll talk. But yes, that's a basic tenet of both of them that I got out of it. All right, so is there interest in at least talking with both of them? Again, we can always, if the feedback or after we talk with them is like, oh, wait, this is a no-go, we can always, just continue with one firm going forward. But I think at this point, given that the dollar amounts too are so close, that would be advantageous just to hear from both of them. Would be my opinion. Okay.
Agreed.
So why don't we start with Republic Services, and if you've had a chance to go through that, and I know Christine has already developed a number of questions, but let's just go through that and I'll start writing down questions based on that. And some of these, again, it's going to take more follow-up from them. I can't necessarily answer what their perspective is, what necessarily their the details. If there's more details that are needed, it will have to come from them, the response.
Director, can I make an operational proposal?
Sure.
Is it possible for us to actually send those compiled questions to you prior to the meetings, just so that we could collate those and identify identical ones,
Sure.
just in the interest of time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Actually, if
Not
I may
that this helps this one, but oh, sorry, Nancy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if Director DeAndrea is in agreement, if you want to send those to me, I can compile those for her. She's extremely busy, so that's something I can certainly do for all of you.
That's gracious. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Of course.
I would like to request that anything that's done like that, that the questions and answers be sent to all of us.
For sure. Yeah. I just meant that way we're not asking the same questions. Cause I'm my
sense,
guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was going to send all of my questions and the answers to the group, but I only sent them like yesterday and got answers back today. So I just plain didn't have time to, but they're not private. I was fully intending that some of the questions I have might be some of the same questions that you guys have, or you might be interested to read the answers for sure.
Well, yeah. And I mean, that the city requests that we not as a committee send all of us to all of us, because then technically that's a public meeting. So it's requested that we send to, the chair or organizer of the committee, and then they send it out to all of us. I mean, I know that from other committees.
Perfect.
So
yep, sounds good.
So
okay, good plan.
Brenda has rejoined us and she has raised her hand to speak.
Okay.
Brenda?
Let's see if I can speak. Can you hear me?
We can. Good job.
Woohoo!
I'm using my phone. I have quite a setup here, but I use it for work all the time, but I just didn't try it with this one. Anyway, I'll get that fixed. And I think having jumped in late, you all are talking about maybe a list of questions, and I was just going to ask about contract length, thinking that we don't have to do it for the rest of our lives. We could try it for maybe get 2 different rates for 5 years and 10 years. And maybe just try it out. This single hauler. That was my thought.
The intent, Brenda, was that this is initially a 5-year contract. And the reason for that was that there's an initial capital cost for them to invest in at least the containers that would go to each property. And there is built in a automatic rate increase that's maximized to either 3% or the consumer price index for the Denver metro area, whichever is lower. So if we move forward, this would be for a 5-year period at least to evaluate that.
Can we get better pricing if we ask for 10 years? Just a thought.
Potentially, but there might not be. I don't know if the city would be interested in that, or as a whole. I'm talking about not the city staff, but would people want to be locked in for 10 years? I'm not sure with the same provider.
Well, maybe if we presented it with different costs associated, we could, if we found out.
Okay. Yeah, I think if there's significant changes or differences, Christine had brought up a couple of comments as well in her questions, where I think we probably at the next meeting or in the interim here, I will need to get the city attorney involved, is how much can we negotiate versus, at what point do we have to get new proposals, basically, if we're traveling so far out of what we had asked for. I think there is some room to negotiate, but I think going from a 5 to a 10-year contract would be significant enough that we'd have to get new proposals from people for those costs.
Sure.
Okay. So any specific comments or questions? And please, I guess I don't want to limit it just to Republic, because many of these might apply to both companies. But is there just, you don't want to start rattling off some ideas about what we want to ask them?
Well, one question I had was with, so I was under the impression that like large item pickup, we were shooting for that being in street or alley pickup. And then one of the providers, I'm not sure, I think we tried to anonymize the prices, but it said that one is only going to be doing bins, and it sounded like bins that would be provided maybe a couple of places throughout the city. Is that true for that one? And then the other provider was actually going to do pickup for large items a couple of times a year in the alleys and in the streets. Is that correct?
That's correct. So there's an example of, if that's a no-go. So the intent of the program and what was detailed in the RFP is that they've got to come to each property for large item pickup. So putting a dumpster down, 3 blocks away isn't really going to help people all that much. I did give an option, let's do a on-site, thing, something like that. They didn't propose. This was Republic Services is the one who proposed these kind of pickup sites, like probably in parks or something like that. Waste Management was the one who said, yes, we will come to the property, both street side and alley side, to pick up the large items. You're correct.
And I guess along with that, then, is that a deal breaker for people in the group here? That we shouldn't even consider them because of that. I'm a little torn between the two because, I don't want to. I'm environmentally conscious. I don't want to make it easy for people to just throw stuff that could go to donation centers or something like that, just because they can throw it in the garbage. But I also think it would be nice for at least once or twice a year for us to be able to have an option of getting rid of certain larger things that, we might just accumulate and just, I don't have any reason to go to the dump. I never do. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of one of those things, I'd have to wait for 3 months or for 3 years to be able to accumulate enough things to make it worth it for me to go to the dump, even just to drive. Anybody else comments?
I wouldn't consider it a deal breaker only in the sense that we only have 2. So if we limit it to 1, then we'd only have 1 choice left. But that is a really good point, and it's maybe something that we'll need to talk to them in our interview about. Could they reconsider that? I don't know.
I mean, related to that, but not exactly large item, to me, the yard waste is a more critical issue, and separating that from large item. Currently, Waste Management, Waste Connections, Waste Services all pick up yard waste if it's bundled in 4-foot long, 25-pound bundles every week. So the city requires you to trim your trees so that they're not a certain level above the sidewalk. And when you have to do that is when it could be any time when the branches get down. For me, it's when snow makes my branches go down, and then I have to do a round of cutting a bunch of branches, and I end up with a bunch of bundles, and that's not going to be on the event day. And the current providers all pick that up every week with no extra fee. In that Waste Services deal that Member Brown mentioned, that's a guaranteed $16 a month for 2 years for waste, including the bundled branches anytime you put them out with no extra fee. That's Waste Services offering that deal, and it's Waste Management that's providing the actual pickup. So Waste Services is doing the billing and customer service. Waste Management is fulfilling it. So we know Waste Management and Waste Connections, which is the other big one, currently include picking branches up at any time when you put them out next to your bins without extra fees. So I feel like the structure of the RFP has, in that regard, initially started by reducing the service. Even though it's increasing the service by requiring alley, it's a reduction in service by making yard waste something that only happens occasionally and costs extra.
Can I respond to that one? I thought about that when I was reading it through, Carson, because you had brought that up before, and I believe that actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, currently that trash or the yard debris is going to the landfill versus where it should be going, which is a completely different facility. So environmentally, you're actually doing much more harm now by filling up the landfill with the debris versus what they're proposing is actually dealing with it in a proper way. But again,
that makes sense. I can see it being environmentally better to have it go to a place where it's not ending up in the regular landfill. But from the perspective of people who have to cut down branches when they're a certain height over the sidewalk to comply with other city laws, that's not necessarily going to coincide with the event day. And
sure, but what didn't they offer service for the yard service as well, and that was included in the weekly?
without extra fees.
Definitely, it was extra fees.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
they all provide it without extra fees right now.
But it's not going where it's supposed to go. That's what my perspective is. And if I'm wrong, then
I think you're right. But I think a lot of people are going to say, I don't care. I just want it picked up and I don't want to have to pay extra.
Sure. And that doesn't make it right. So
no, I
does
I
anybody know exactly, because I've heard so many things from different people that some of these services don't actually recycle, and they're not really doing what they're saying they're doing. So, I mean, do you know exactly where Waste Management or Republic would be dumping these kind of branches? I mean, do we actually know that they won't be going into the landfill?
Good question.
So right now, to this discussion, if there's a bundle of yard waste, let's say, or a bundle of branches next to the trash container, that those would just be treated as trash. So they would go to the landfill. Through the program as it was presented in the RFP, is if we do the either composting or just the yard waste, that those would need to be taken to a facility that would recycle those materials into something else like mulch.
And that would be an extra fee, right, Maria?
But it would be an extra fee, correct? But right
unless
now
they fit in your 96-gallon trash barrel, then you just put them in your trash barrel, or have that for your regular weekly thing. Or if you filled up your 96-gallon trash barrel and you still had yard waste, then in their proposals you would be charged either $1.50 or $3.50, depending on which company it was. And I thought, just my opinion, I thought $1.50 for an extra, whether it's yard waste or you just had a lot of extra trash 1 week, $1.50 seemed reasonable. $3.50 seemed kind of high. But then their prices weighed out differently on other parts of their proposal. It wasn't like one was consistently more expensive on everything. They kind of all shook out to be fairly even. But just as far as that extra, if you have extra trash or extra yard waste that you want to put with trash, I thought $1.50 was fine, and $3.50, I was hoping if we do negotiate or have the opportunity, that's something we could ask the Republic if they could come down a little on that.
I agree with you, but I mean, $1.50 doesn't seem like much to a lot of people, or $3.50. But people living on fixed incomes, all this is making a difference in their lives. What we are doing here, and it is becoming so expensive to live in this city. And now you're asking us to put something else on our water bill. And people are very unhappy about this. I've spoken to people in my neighborhood. They don't like this idea at all, because costs just keep raising and raising in the city of Inglewood. And they're talking about this as a monopoly, and why is the city doing this where you're taking away our freedom of choice? So, I mean, sometimes what isn't a lot to you may be a lot to a senior who is on a very, very tight income. So I'm just asking everyone to consider that. Thank you.
Okay, and Jeff has raised his hand to speak.
Yeah, just I think it's absolutely, we should be taking cost into effect, and we should be comparing what the current average rates are that are paid, which I don't have it right in front of me, but I think was around 25, somewhere between 25 and $30 a month, based on the survey. That's what the survey results, if I'm remembering.
The survey was, I couldn't answer the survey because it asked questions that
Erickson, can I
couldn't
finish
answer.
my comment, please?
Yeah, the survey is just very limited.
So my other point was that I think we should be keeping, as we're going through these issues, kind of a running list, because if we do reach a point where we want to go back to the haulers and say, whether it be a full formal proposal or a negotiation, like on this yard waste point, for instance, I have some others, Dane brought some up that we might want to, is someone just keeping track of all these separate issues, or should we be taking notes? Because I think it would be good to run through, once we've gone through the proposals, what these outstanding issues and questions are. And then as a group, we could make a determination about whether, we feel like they should resubmit supplemental materials or even consider a revised RFP altogether. So we can make sure we're thinking through all these additional issues.
Yeah, Jeff, I am keeping track. I'm trying to keep track, and I've, like, for our previous meeting, I went back through and kind of noted things so that I'm trying to capture everything. But I think that's a great approach.
Carson,
I'm sorry I interrupted you, Jeff. I won't do that anymore.
No worries.
Carson, you're
yeah,
next.
I had a question for interpretation. Member Brinker. So when you're saying the $1.50 or $3.50, you're talking about the additional bag pickup on the.
Yeah.
And so, like, would that be interpreted as per bundle of branches?
I was interpreting that. I suppose that's a question. I don't know if I interpreted right, but I had figured if the extra bundle of branches was about the size of a 96-gallon bin, then they would charge you that extra $1.50 for it.
Per bundle. And then I
guess,
would that be going to this environmentally friendly yard waste place? Because this
No, it would be just with your regular trash. And, Gandhi made a really good point that that's not going to the right place. Of course, now it's not going to the right place anyway. So that's kind of status quo.
Yeah. Well, and it also depends, it's more of an environmental event when there's, like, at least that's when I have to deal with branches, is when there's a big storm and suddenly I have a ton of branches, and it's piles of that I have to, it takes me hours to bundle a bunch of branches. And then so far I've never had to pay $1 to have any of that taken away. I agree with, remember Kawanabe, is that right? Am I saying it right?
It was close. It's Kawanabe.
Kawanabe, remember Kawanabe? Yeah. That I would prefer it to go and not be in the landfill. But, if it's going to cost me a whole bunch, I'd probably just let it go landfill.
Yeah, we're kind of all over the place, but their yard waste prices and compost prices were probably a lot higher than any of us would have liked to have seen. And their minimum participation rates also seemed pretty high for us to reach. And so that was kind of disappointing to see. I'm not sure that we would get, was it 2,500 takers for Republic and 300 for waste management, minimum participation for both compost and yard waste. And I was also curious why those weren't combined into one program or one minimum participation, because I would have thought compost and yard waste would both go to the same organic facility. So I'm sorry that takes us off in a different direction, but since we're talking about yard waste, I guess it is relevant. But I didn't see that as necessarily being viable for this first round of trying to get this tested out for the city and get it, acceptable to all the residents. I just didn't think we would meet those minimum numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Anji, you're next.
Yeah. And to that point, I think what I'd like to say or suggest is that we put the scenario list to these service providers and get this matrixed information as far as, like, the cost per scenario, just so that we can look at all these different things, like the trash, and also talk to them about historically in Lafayette, what happened over there, like how many did you actually get, or was that a city compelled program? So I think to answer a lot of these questions about cost, and it looks like a lot of them are stemming from cost, it would be getting that visibility across the line, a 360 perspective of all of the scenarios that I think Jeff was talking about with compiling.
Yeah,
Steve?
good idea. And that was one of the questions that I sent to Maria, like, why are these costs so much higher? I was looking at yard waste and compost specifically, but why are they so much higher than the costs that other cities that have gone to organized trash? Why are compost prices so much higher? The other range seemed to be at the low end $5 and at the higher end maybe $11. And I had kind of figured in my head that maybe we'd get bids around $8 extra for compost a month. So when it came to be, what was it, like 16 and 30, that was kind of shocking to see. And I'm just curious, that would be one of our questions to ask the providers, is why the costs are so much higher than other cities. They'll probably say that we don't have the same volume or number of houses as other cities. I don't know, but I'd still be curious to find out.
Okay, so I have Steve Ward, then Carson, and then Matt Adams.
So first I'll say that I agree with the point that's been brought up about the branches. I subscribe currently to Republic, and that's not part of my subscription, but it's not something I would use anyway. I would pay a tree service to haul that stuff off. I've learned from experience. It's much easier to do it that way for me. But the 2,500 compost subscribers was a pretty sizable red flag to me, because I thought that was somewhere near the target number for total households that we would have in the service. So can you elaborate on that, Maria?
Yeah, we have about 9,600 accounts is what I've calculated. But 2,500 to me, that minimum that they said is basically telling me they don't want to do it, because I don't think we can get, so let's say that's roughly, what did that be? A little less than a third, maybe. They just don't want to do it. And to try and educate people at this initial stage, just about the base program, and then to get them to sign on for 2,500 households to sign on for composting, it's like, wow, it was so deflating to see that, because I just don't know that we can get there in this first round. 300 maybe, with waste management, but not 2,500.
Carson?
Just specific to your, you wanted us to respond to Republic. The couple specifics I had on Republic were, so they're pushing for a 4% increase rather than 3%, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd be like, well, we wrote what we wrote in the RFP, and then they think that they can make a comment like that. I just don't get that. I don't even know what to say.
And then they did the same thing with the opt-out fee, right?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. So I can't even comment or give you an answer.
Matt?
Excuse me, but great questions to ask them, Carson.
Sorry. And Matt?
So I was just wondering, I agree that really the third thing we need to compare here is what people are currently paying. Is there any way to get that data beyond the survey itself? Is there any way to know what the current rates are for these companies or all companies operating in Inglewood?
That was one of the questions that Christine asked me yesterday or the day before. And the problem is they don't publish their rates. Nobody publishes their rates. We did try to get, as part of that survey, what people are paying per month. We could ask, I could ask each of you maybe to send me your bills just to see, and we could compile that as kind of a snapshot in time, but we don't have nor a source of a way to get good data on a wide spectrum of people. And what I suspect, because based on what we heard at those public hearings or public meetings, was that it's all over the board. And they might lure you in with that initial good price. And then this just happened to me, actually. I've been getting the same price per month. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, by the way, here's your new bill, that's $12 more per month. And it was COVID, related and this and that. And maybe that is, or maybe that's not, but that's what the feedback is. So it's more qualitative data than it is quantitative data that we have.
Do you think we could ask them their average rate for all of their customers in Inglewood, as well as their lowest and their highest?
Yeah, and we can ask them anything.
Good. Let's do. And also a sense of how their rates the first couple years differ from what their rates would be after the first couple years.
Cheryl, you're next. Cheryl? Cheryl, are you there?
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
We can, thank you.
Okay. I am so sorry. Technical difficulties.
It's okay.
Well, I just wanted to mention a couple things. Back to the compost. I was just curious also why the bins are so large. Why would you need a 65-gallon bin to compost, especially if you're brand new at it? And maybe if we could go with smaller bins, we could reduce the cost. And if we could reduce the cost, maybe more people would sign up for that service.
Good question.
And then, okay, and I just had one other comment also. This is going back to Marcy's comment about if the recycling and the composting is taken care of properly. I did see in the waste management proposal that they did invite all of us to go down to the recycle facility as well as the compost facility. And I would be more than happy to go check it out. I don't know if anybody else is interested.
I'd be stoked. I think
Yeah,
that'd
I
be
would
cool.
too. That'd be cool.
Same.
Yeah, definitely, because that was one of the questions I had was the differences in their recycling facilities, given that Waste Management really touted their brand new state-of-the-art facility, and I have no way to compare that to the one that Republic was using. I think it was GFL. And is it just how they wrote their proposal bragging about it, or is there really a significant difference?
Dane, you're next.
I just had a comment again on the compost. Yeah, I definitely agree with the size, but I was also thinking about, at least they mentioned picking up weekly with the compost too. That seems a little excessive. I was wondering if they would be willing to do, bi-weekly or something like that might make it more manageable in terms of pricing as well, because, from my house, I guess if we're not including yard waste, I would probably have, maybe a couple of gallons, at most, depending on what's there. So something like the 32-gallon or whatever the smallest version was would be possible, but also spacing it out. And that might allow us to cut down cost and also increase the likelihood. I think that if the price is lower, we're more likely to hit our target. The other thing is can we try an initial compelling everybody in the city to compost? I know certain cities have done that. My brother just moved back from San Francisco, so that's an exaggerated option, but it is one of those things where they make people compost, and they also charge more for people who throw away more. So it might cause more people to recycle as well as compost, so it might divert more of that yard waste to the compostables, move it to other areas, and it might make it worthwhile for people to buy a 96-gallon bin for their compost, so they could get rid of their yard waste as well if they're going to the same facility.
Neighbors might share them too. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Just a comment on the bi-weekly versus weekly. I think the reason for the weekly is so that it doesn't accumulate and then attract like raccoons and mice and things like that. It's not so much the volume as that kind of downside to the compost.
Jeff, did you still want to speak? I think I accidentally took your hand down.
Oh, real quick, I was going to mention the weekly part too. I know in Denver they have opt-in compost service and it's bi-weekly. And I don't know what their experience has been. I used to have it when I lived in Denver years back. And I didn't have any issues with it, in a lid, in a large container. I do think there are legitimate questions on this add-on compost point, because it's been a topic that there's been a lot of interest in. I think the survey reflected that as well. I really do think it's worthwhile going back or asking the question to explore bi-weekly, potentially smaller bins. The minimum participation, I thought the exact same thing, Director, that the 2,500 was just, nope, we're not going to do that. And as something that there's a lot of interest in, yard waste could become a part of that too. I do think there should be options for yard waste pickup aside from just compost. I no pun intended, I just thought these compost bids were kind of trash. And wasn't very $30 a month on top from the first provider. I just don't see people buying into that. So I was pretty disappointed in these compost bids.
So then I have Carson and then Cheryl. I'll be coming back to you. So Carson?
Just in regard to cost, a lot of people have received these door hangers. I'm sure most of you probably have. And I did look into that. That's this Waste Services I mentioned earlier, and they're offering a fixed rate of $16 a month for 96-gallon waste, $5 extra a month. So for recycling as well. And then that includes yard waste, obviously landfill, not to the ideal place. But that's what we're up against as far as like citizen perspective on cost is 16 a month guaranteed for 2 years for waste. And a lot of people are probably jumping on that. And that's provided by, like, the service is actually fulfilled by Waste Management. And within that, we know that there's markup because Waste Services is the one doing it. So, we know that Waste Management can provide it cost-wise for less than 16 because there's enough in there for Waste Services to be doing the billing and customer service out of whatever they're getting out of that.
Okay, Cheryl?
I'm good right now. Thank you.
Oh, I'll take your hand down. Thank you.
Nancy, I don't know how to raise my hand. I don't see the option anymore. I'd seen it at one point, but I only see participants, share screen, and record.
If you hit participants, it's on the bottom right on the participant pop-up.
Steve?
Thank you. Okay, great.
Steve, you're next.
So I think one of the differences between that flyer and what we're looking at RFP-wise is a big one is the requirement to allow collection in the alley or the curb. On the flyer, they tell you where you put your trash. On the program that we're looking at, we choose which one we want. So that in and of itself adds some cost. Then there are other services that were specified in the RFP that this flyer, they kind of just get to pick what they want. So there may be some room for the committee to adjust the desired services in order to shoot for a lower target price. But those are some of the considerations that are potentially getting left out when we say, oh, the private sector can just do it cheaper.
Marcy? Marcy, I see your hand, but I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have to keep on mute.
That's okay.
I'm sorry, everyone.
We gotcha.
But, with the $16 a month with Waste Services, that does not include an administrative fee. So I think when we're talking about all these services or these additional fees for composting and for some of people who cannot bring these heavy carts down to the alley or to the street or curbside, that's an extra fee. I mean, I just believe we're talking about a lot of extra fees here. And I'm hoping that the citizens who, whatever decision they make, is that they are very well aware of the fees that are attached to this one trash hauler program. And, and then you have, of course, the administrative fee. And so what I'm wondering is, it's all well and good to say, it's $15.46, but when you start adding up all the fees, it's quite a bit more than that, I believe, with the administrative fees. And then also, I know this has not been brought up, but I still don't understand the part about if your trash is not picked up one week, that the city gets the credit for that. So, I know I'm opening up another can of worms, so to speak, and I'm off subject, but I would just like everybody to, think about all the fees that are involved going forward. Because this Waste Service is $16 a month. That's it. No, nothing else. And if I were a citizen, that's what I would go for.
Kanji?
My question was actually just towards the alley maintenance. So if we're having a decrease in the street maintenance and upkeep, are we diverting those funds to upgrading our alleys? Are we going to get paved alleys, which I would love, right? But just a consideration for if we're having all the trucks now go through the alleyway, does that cause additional harm to, because we're already getting the slipping and sliding in the mud season on my alley.
So the way that it was presented in the RFP is that you can put it out either on your alley or on the street. And we have that goes beyond choice, because in some cases people physically can't put it in the alley or physically can't put it at the street. So we have to provide basically both options. But to your point about the paving of the alley, that was always, I believe it was Waste Connections who, refused to go down the alleys and would then force people to go out to the street side. But we have been going through, we're about roughly 40% through the city of kind of regrading our alleys. We haven't gotten into a program to pave them yet, but we are regrading them to make them more stable.
Look, you accidentally muted yourself, Maria.
Oops, sorry. So we've been getting better feedback from both citizens and the waste haulers that the alleys are more accessible.
Awesome, thank you.
Dane?
Yeah, I actually was just responding to Marcy's comment about the fees and stuff like that. I was just pulled up my waste management bill here, and I was looking, let's see here. I have a fuel environmental charge of $23.56, regulatory cost recovery charge $3.75, administrative charge $6.50. Right now, we probably re-signed up for waste management maybe a year ago to drop the price, and it's $118.65 every 3 months. So I'm averaging out at about $40 a month. And, at least based on the base costs of just, because all we have is recycling and garbage, we're already averaging out quite a bit higher. And my guess is that, that teaser rate that they've got everybody trying to come into for the first 2 years is going to go up significantly, or they probably already have those fees built in there until you get your first bill. They don't see that there's fees, because I don't know. You see that on Excel bill, you see that on your water bill, you see it on your Comcast bill. It's all the same. We all end up paying fees, and I definitely agree that it stinks, and we do need to pay attention to that in terms of our total cost. But I think we need to make sure that if we decide to go with one of these companies, they say, yes, these are the costs. There is no, other BS fees that just keep getting tacked on and on and on. And that might be one big thing that we don't have to get, because we don't get the COVID-19 charge or something like that as well.
Carson?
I on the fees, when we evaluate this, it'd be nice to know, what is the total fee that's going to hit the citizen? Because what we're looking at in the Excel sheet, this is pre-city admin fees, right? So, I think that's
correct.
important. I think that's important for us to be able to know what the city's thinking there.
Okay. Jeff?
Totally agree. We should have a 360 look at all of the fees involved and be able to compare apples to apples. I'm just curious, does anyone have that waste services deal? Because I was thinking the same thing. There are likely fees tacked on top of that. I would love to see someone who's enrolled in it and what their bill looks like.
I just switched to it, but I haven't gotten a bill yet. So I've been at mine averages out to 25 with Waste Connections. And so I took this because I wanted to see it, but I had already paid my 3 months forward for Waste Connections. So it switches for me on October 1st. and then I'll get a bill and find out if they put more on it than the $22 or whatever.
Yeah, I'd be really, really curious to see that. And maybe if anybody can ask their neighbors if they have it, if they have a bill now, we can take a look at. But while we're on the cost subject, I guess it's probably makes sense in understanding that this is not inclusive of fees, but should we just go over really quickly what the fees look like? At least I'm looking at the 96 gallon, which, is one uniform option. One hauler and this is for trash and recycling, was $18.90. Another hauler was $18.55. I think I figured out which hauler was which from something they said in one of their proposals throughout this, but I forget which one it was. I think for 96 gallon for the options on size of, I forget what we're calling it, the choose pay as you throw. It was a little bit higher for trash and recycling, again, $19.35 a month and $18.80 a month. So, I mean, I think for most, depending on what the fees do, I know for me that would be a reduction. I'm paying waste management right now, and I think my bill's like 90 and change a quarter. So it would represent a reduction for me, but I think it's worthwhile for us to just baseline and level set what at least they've come forward with. Obviously, composting and other things would be an additional amount, but it would be a reduction for a lot of people, I think.
Well, depending on what the admin fee ends up being too.
Right.
Christine?
One of the questions I have when we interview them is why their price for 96 gallons for pay as you throw is higher than their price for 96 gallons for their base. Everyone gets the same size. I don't know if any of you know that offhand. Maybe it has to do with the automation of their trucks. That's something I was curious. I thought a 96 gallon would be a 96 gallon. And then another comment on the fee conversation, which I think is really important, especially those teaser rates. Those drive me nuts. And one of the things I really like about the potential for a citywide program is to have a guaranteed price for 5 years, where I know that my bill is not going to suddenly go up by 50% without me expecting it. Those rates where you have it for a year or you have it for 2 years, that can be really jarring for some people when it suddenly goes up on year 3.
Director DeAndrea?
Yes, thank you. I just want to tell everybody I'm trying to call up some of the documents, and so I'm going to get back on my back connected to my PC, and so I'm going to no longer going to see my video, but you should still hear me. So just wanted to let you know that.
Okay. Thank you. Carson?
Actually, you can come back to me.
Okay, Kanji?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff. I wanted to level set as well. And then add a question to just the list is the contracts examples that they provided over. They seem to be all over the board as far as the number of households comparative to the overall contracts. And so wanted to get a little bit more insight into the discrepancies between those.
Carson, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, to Member Brinker's point about having like a fixed, like knowing what it's going to cost, that is a benefit, and that could, if we do, get a good deal basically, and the city admin fees aren't too high, and we are actually pulling this off with an increase in service by having Ally for both, then that actually could be a benefit for the fixed income people. I know, like when I spent a period of time knocking doors, and I talked to a lot of people who are fixed income and concerned about property taxes. I mean, there are a lot of people in Inglewood who that is an issue for, and that could actually potentially be a benefit of this, is a fixed price instead of the way we're right now the providers raise the price all the time and then, do things like I do and switch providers to try and get it cheaper again. So.
Dane?
I actually just had a question. So I know in these base bids type of thing, it shows us options for 96 gallon, 64 gallon, 32 gallon. Are residents allowed to choose one or the other? Or is everybody, like if we sign on, we say everybody's going to be at 96 gallon, everybody's at 64 gallon, everybody's at 32 gallon. Is that part of the deal, or is that something that we all can choose?
I was to understand the options were presented as 3 so that people could choose the level of service that fit best for them. That was my understanding.
It looks like on the, at least on the cost proposal summary though, it's almost broken down as a uniform 96 versus these other options, and there's different pricing for it, it looks like. I thought the same thing, Steve, that the idea was to provide flexibility as far as what citizens want to select for their size, depending on how much they throw. So I didn't realize we were getting just one alternative. We might have baked that into the RFP. I don't recall.
I think we wanted to get their pricing on both just to weigh them, because the benefit of having the pay as you throw, which would be the 32, 64, 96 gallons, is that we could potentially, households that have very little trash, say that they're just a single person or senior or so forth, that they could pay less because they don't have as much trash, and you pay more if you have a lot of trash. And that kind of makes sense from an economist's perspective. The benefit then of the other approach, and I think we have to recommend an approach to the city council or give them some guidance. The other approach would be just everybody gets 96, whether you like it or not, everyone pays the same price. And the benefit of that is just simplicity. That's correct, Christine.
Steve?
That's right. As I look now, I realize the tabs on the sheet, the first tab is pay as you throw, which is the one where the citizens can choose the option. And the second tab is uniform container, where everybody gets the 96 gallon container, whether that's what they want or not.
And it looks like the cost savings for the 32 gallon versus the 96 gallon, it's less than a $4 difference, $19.35 for the 96 and $15.45 for the 32. I would expect that would be a little bit better than that for 1/3 the size, but
I had too, especially based on the pricing we had seen from a number of other cities. You definitely got a significant price cut if you used only a little bit of trash, whereas there's not much incentive to go lower. So that was kind of a surprise to me, and one of the things I was hoping that either we could ask them about or put in our wish list for negotiating with them about, because one of our goals should be encouraging people to have less waste overall, and getting a much lower price for that is one of the ways to incentivize that behavior.
Cheryl?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so on that topic, I just wanted to point out on the 6th tab, it does talk about size change of containers. And I just thought that for $40, if you needed to change the size of your container after a one-time free change, was a little excessive. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
Kanji?
Yeah, just in the interest of time, we've got about a half hour left. I just wanted to check in and see what next steps were going to be, or what we should be looking to accomplish in this meeting to set us up for success for the next. There's several questions that I have, but are we continuing just to pepper questions? So it's more of a logistical question for the director.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. I will lower my hand. Yeah, I think, what we can do, I think we're having a good discussion right now. I would like to save a little time to go over the schedule and some of the other documents that were in the agenda. But I think what we can do is we can continue this discussion for a while, but then ask for each of you to send me back comments or questions, and then I'll compile those within the next few days and get those back out to you so that we can have a complete list of what we'll send to the companies. So no need to, if you don't feel like you can get all of them down now. I think the discussion is of more value than just throwing out the questions.
That sounds good. Logistically, we wanted to send those to Nancy though, right?
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
So I have Carson next.
I know we've been all over the place, but you had originally asked to respond to specifically Republic, but I had a couple specific to Waste Management.
Okay.
Okay. So on page 20 on theirs, it's kind of interesting where they're talking about their equipment, and they're saying that they're going to use the rear end load trucks in Inglewood with the Corrado. I guess that's partly what I'm confused about. So they're saying they're going to use Corrado can trucks, but that because of our alleys, they're going to use the rear end load. But then the rest of their document talks about the great aspects of the front load trucks. And then when I looked at the Corrado can truck, like the company website, they actually say that their front load trucks work great in alleys. So I was just that's something I think we should ask them about, just to understand like what equipment they're actually planning on using and why they touted the front end truck in their proposal, but then have a little thing that says they're going to use the rear end one. And even though the manufacturer says the front end works in alleys, and I guess the front end ones, there is a safety benefit because it's all in front, so the driver can see in front of them. And anyway, I thought it was an interesting thing to ask about.
Yep. Anyone else have thoughts or comments on? Yeah, please open it up to both Waste Management as well.
So I have Kanji and then Jeff.
A couple of questions I had was if we could get metric insight as far as the carbon footprint that they have projected for both companies, because I know that they had a discrepancy about the type of fuel that they would be using.
Yep.
And the other one was just the sharing of metrics. I like the idea that they would be sharing the week-to-week or month-to-month pickup and recycling to the city, and wondering if they would make that visibility to the citizens as well.
Then Jeff?
I'd like to really develop like a dashboard on the city website that you could go to and see those statistics on a regular ongoing basis.
That'd be amazing.
It's a good idea. Jeff?
Yeah, Kanji, we must be on this same wavelength, but I think it's worth noting that it looks like Waste Management, I think they said 80% of their fleet is powered by clean burning, near zero emissions compressed natural gas fuel. I think Republic are they straight diesel? It's also something to consider, for these trucks are going to be driving through our neighborhoods and we'll be breathing that air for a long time. Not necessarily a dollars and cents consideration, but I thought that was a worthy distinction to note.
Christine?
Yeah, my comment was on that exact subject. I noticed on the Republic website, they do brag that they use a lot of CNG trucks. And I was surprised that then in this proposal specifically, they proposed buying new diesel trucks. And that was one of the questions I would like to ask them in an interview is, would they consider a CNG truck? And then some details going along with that, and this goes for waste management as well. I'm wondering what percentage, if any, of the CNG going into those trucks comes from their own landfill. In other words, using waste to turn it into essentially a renewable fuel, so to speak. And I think that waste management does that, and I'd be curious for this proposal or just in general, what percent of their fuel for these trucks would come from their own landfill versus just regular natural gas. And then the same, kind of along the same lines for Republic. Do they own a landfill? Could they get landfill gas from that? Could they put that into CNG trucks? Is that something they do? Or is it that diesel is our only option here?
Carson?
Oh, sorry. Can I add one more thing on that subject? Sorry about that. I would also like to ask them in their interviews if they have looked at and if they would consider in the future, not right away, but in the future, doing a cost comparison about moving towards electric trucks, especially considering there are state grants now that cover the incremental difference between an electric truck and a regular truck. So in theory, they could get, in the coming years, get a truck for the same price if they got that grant from the state. And I'm sure that's on their radar, but I would just like to hear their answers for that.
Okay, Carson?
This is a little bit more out there, but maybe not. I think some of you all know about this stuff, but so our wastewater treatment plant has that modification now that generates that fuel that comes off of it, right? I think, remember, Fraser, you know about that, right? Is it possible that that could be something that we could tie into this whole deal, that could be fuel that they use for the trucks?
I think it's injected straight into Excel's pipeline on site, but there could presumably be a way to fuel it right there. I know other cities have done that, who have similar options. That would be kind of cool. Fueling our own trucks off our own waste.
Totally.
Yeah, I can certainly ask about that. I'm not sure if what's coming out of the plant, is that usable as CNG? Or, yeah, I can ask. Okay. Others?
Sorry, Kanji?
This is more a logistical proposal again. Is there a way to get a list of these questions that are submitted to Nancy so that we can start upvoting them, so we can prioritize the ones that are most important to the members here?
Absolutely. So maybe let's talk for a few minutes about logistics. So I'm just going to stop sharing this screen and go to share the So if we go down to the schedule here, so the idea is that we would talk about questions tonight, and then give those to the firms, and then set up some time to come back, set up interviews with them, but then come back either in a couple of weeks or 3 weeks to review our scoring sheets. We don't have to do that step. So what we could do instead is set a date for when you want to get questions back to me. And then to your point, Kanji, we could get that initial list. Maybe I'll just throw out some dates, but by next Friday, which would give you guys a little over a week, but there is a holiday weekend in here. But let's say next Friday, we get questions back. I send those out to the group. You can either add on, or we can see where if you've answered all the questions, and then so basically one iteration before they're sent to the companies, or we can extend that longer or shorter, whatever.
That makes sense. I like that.
Does that date? Let's see, that would be the 11th. So is that a reasonable time frame?
That would work for me.
That would work.
Be fine for me.
Sure.
So that schedule that I have pulled up here, so would it be possible to meet then either the week of September 14th or the 21st to kind of go over those questions, and then continue to kind of have some of these discussions about, you know, where we go from here? Or do you want to do the interviews first, or do you want me to try and schedule that tour with the waste management facility?
Able to enlarge that by any chance? I can't.
It is in the agenda packet too. If you
I will go there.
Director, could you repeat the options that you suggested?
Sure. Let me just call up that. I'm gonna. Okay.
Getting better.
Okay. So the options would be is that. So, and what are our next steps? So we've kind of got a game plan to formulate our series of questions for the two proposers. And then either we go straight to the interviews, or we have another meeting of just our group before the interviews. And then do we want to slot in that tour of the waste management MRF facility sometime in there?
Could I add an additional one in there? Mm-hmm. If we could get that matrix fee visibility, both of those on, so if we could just list out, you know, those various different scenarios as well as the price breakdowns and then the end to end. I think that would really inform a lot of the questions that we have.
Okay.
Is there any concern that by touring a waste management facility, we might be providing some sort of advantage to waste management over Republic?
It might be perceived that way, yeah, even though that might not be the intent.
Wouldn't we be able to tour both of them ideally?
I'd agree with that. Even just put out there the proposal that we're requesting to see the facilities.
Yeah, I could certainly ask Republic to make that same offer.
Marcy, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm confused. Who are we supposed to send these questions to? Is it to Maria or to Nancy or to the chair?
To Nancy.
Because I heard something about the chair too in there. Pardon me?
To Nancy. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hopefully,
okay, thank you.
At the end of the meeting here, we're going to establish a chair and vice chair, so we don't have those.
Yeah,
those
I just heard that earlier, so I didn't
Okay.
know exactly who the questions for that we have for these two companies. Who do they go to, and when did you want them by, Nancy?
I believe Director DeAndrea said September 11th. Is that correct?
Okay, I saw 9/11 there. Okay, by 9/11. That's fine. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I will ask, so any feedback on like what we do first or second? After we get the interview or the first set of questions finalized and back to the two firms, do we want to have another meeting before we have the interviews, or should I set those up?
I think it would be nice to go right into, if we have a good list of questions, if everyone's reviewed these RFPs, I'd like to ask these questions directly to some of these providers. I'm open to meeting again prior to that. Might be nice to have a little back and forth with them directly.
I agree.
Me too.
Okay. Great. And I will work though and get you that kind of complete view of the prices that people would be charged. So really it's the price from the company, that admin fee, and then the tipping fees that we'd have to cover. As I wrote in the memo, the tipping fees, I took that out of the equation so that we would keep that apples to apples for any proposers that would come in. So that will be, those are the only two additions on top of these costs. But I will summarize those and show you the detailed breakdown. I'm running that past our finance group right now and the city manager to review that. That's why I don't have the admin fees finalized yet.
And I wasn't quite clear. Are you also planning on reaching out to Republic, or is the committee on board with that, to see if they would offer some view of their facilities to us as well?
Yeah, that was my intent. I was gonna reach out to them and see if they'd make the same offer for a tour for us.
I think one of the things we could do when we're answering questions is maybe again get both companies to answer questions for us at the same time. You know, so they have a little bit of peer pressure to live up to their competition a little bit too. I think it's a important thing for both of them to see equally what we want out of this deal too, because that way we're not asking, you know, one question of one and another question of another. It could get into kind of, I don't know, just not us coming across the same way to each company on what our priorities are. And I think it'd be important for us to talk to both companies at the same time. Is that our understanding of this next question session with the companies?
I think this first list will involve a lot of the same questions to both firms, and then some very specific ones like the ones we were talking about the vehicles. In the interview though, I'm guessing that in the interview, they'll want to do that individually without the other firm in the room.
So that they're not sharing sensitive cost data with each other.
My guess is that's what they would want to share internal processes with their competitors, but may with us.
I like what Member Borman suggested, though. I mean, it makes sense to present a consistent thing and have them get the same feeling from us. I mean, I also understand why they wouldn't want it, but I like the idea of interviewing them together.
We could also just have one person ask them the same list of questions, right?
Okay.
Yes,
that could be a better idea.
Answers are fine.
What was that?
I said I think written answers are fine. They can, we'll send those out, you know, I mean, separately. I'd still like to tour both facilities, but same list of questions, go out to them separately and confidentially, and then they have an opportunity to provide those answers written, and maybe invite them to a meeting if we want, but I think written ought to be fine.
Okay.
Better to document that.
Written could allow, this is kind of a question I'm formulating in my head. Written, could that allow us to propose some negotiating points about potentially tweaking or lowering some of the prices? Whereas if we just asked them directly in a meeting, they would say, well, we'd have to go back to our bosses, et cetera, and we can't give you an answer.
Right. And we want everything documented anyway, so we do want everything in writing.
some things would be, lend themselves to conversation though, like the types of trucks and why using one truck over another, and some of the environmental concerns we have. Like, I think discussion with them, there's value to that as well, and we can always follow up with getting anything that comes out of that conversation in writing.
Well, I think that lends towards a service level agreement that we need to kind of iron out in this proposal too. And those, I think that having a conversation with them later on is important, especially in regards to service level. But anyway, this meeting is getting long. Aren't we supposed to appoint a chair? And I'd like to nominate Jeff Frazier for that.
Yeah, let me just.
I think Kanji should.
Oh no, that's fine. I lowered my hand.
Oh, I think Kanji should be the co-chair. So those are my ideas.
Okay.
I second that.
I'll second that.
Wait.
I respectfully decline. I apologize. I can't take that responsibility currently.
I have
Wait a minute. Have we already decided before anybody else can make a nomination?
No.
No, we have a motion on the floor. I couldn't see who made the motion. Was it you, Brenda?
I made a motion to appoint Jeff Frazier as the chair.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Who is I? Could you identify
Brenda
yourself?
is speaking.
Brenda?
Can you see me on the video? Brenda is speaking.
Okay, thank you. That's what I needed to know. So Brenda nominated Jeff.
Okay. Well, this is Marcy, and I'm going to nominate Carson for the
hold
chair.
on. Okay, give me 1 second, please. And who was the second on Jeff?
Yeah, so when you make a motion, there has to be a second.
Does anybody second the nomination of Jeff?
Remember,
I would second
Kawanabe
it.
did. I thought.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I'll second that if he doesn't. It's Matt.
I'll third it then.
Okay. I have Brenda and Kanji. Okay, so I have a motion on the floor for that. We can only have one motion on the floor. I can take nominations. So the second motion is Marcy is nominating Carson. Do I have a second?
Yes,
Who is yes?
I would like
please?
to. This is Cheryl Stewart,
Thank
and
you.
I would like to second Carson.
Okay. Any other nominations for chair?
I'd like to
I'd like to
nominate
no-
Stephen Ward.
Okay, please.
Second.
Dane Borman.
Okay, Dane moves. And who was the second? Christine?
Second from Christine.
third it.
For Dane. Okay. Any other nominations? Going once? Going twice? Okay. So the first motion, whoops, sorry, I lost my sheet. Our first motion, which was made by Brenda Hupka and seconded by Kanji Kawanabe. I know I said that wrong and I do apologize. So that is to, the nomination is for Jeff Frazier to be your chair. So I'm going to take a vote on that. Brenda, how do you vote?
I raise my hand.
Oh, can you,
Yay.
we have to do a verbal roll call, sorry.
Yay. I raise. Yeah.
Okay, Carson?
Nay.
Okay, so an N. And Cheryl?
Nay.
Christine?
Yay.
Dane?
Yay.
And Felicia's not here. Jeff?
Nay.
Are you turning down the nomination?
I would propose a more qualified alternative in Stephen Ward and table the vote until we could vote on his nomination.
I could second that.
Okay, hold on, guys.
We
Okay,
still need 2 people though.
hold on. We're doing chair, please, first.
I know, I'm just telling you.
Jeff moves to table, and who seconded?
Brenda,
Brenda seconded. Okay. All right, so we have to move on the table, or vote on the table. So we're moving to table Jeff's nomination. Brenda?
yay.
Carson?
Yay.
Cheryl?
Yay.
Christine?
Yay.
Dane?
Yay.
Yay.
Jeff?
Yay.
Kanji?
Yay.
Marcy?
Yay.
Matt?
Yeah.
Yay. Steve?
Aye.
Okay. So the motion
Busy.
the motion to table passes. The next motion on the table is moved by Marcy, seconded by Cheryl, nominating Carson Green as your chair. So that is what we are voting on now. Carson Green as chair. Brenda?
Nay.
I'm sorry?
Nay.
Oh, so no. Carson?
No.
Sure. Yeah, I would take it if you guys wanted me to.
Okay. Cheryl?
Yay.
Christine?
Yay.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time. Yes or no, please?
No.
No, thank you. Dane?
No.
Felicia's not here. Jeff?
Nay.
Okay. Kanji?
Nay.
Okay. Marcy?
Yes.
Thank you. Matt?
No.
Okay. And Steve?
No.
Okay, give me a moment, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2. Okay, so the motion fails 3-7. So now we're moving on to, help me out. Dane moved. Christine
For
seconded.
Stephen Ward. Yeah.
Yes, Dane moved. Christine seconded to nominate Steve Ward as your chair. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we're voting on Steve Ward as chair. All right, Brenda.
Yes.
Yes.
Carson. Thank you. Cheryl.
Yes.
Thank you. Christine.
Yes.
Thank you. Dane.
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
All right. Kanji.
Yes.
Thank you. Marcy.
Yes.
Okay. Matt.
Yes.
And Steve.
Yes, and thank you.
So it has
The great unifier.
unanimously passed. Steve Ward is now the chair. So now we will take nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Carson as vice chair.
Okay, give me 1 second. Steve moves. Do I have a second?
This is Marcy. I second it.
Marcy seconds. For Carson. Any other nominations?
Can I nominate Kanji? Or will he respectfully decline for that too?
I'll respectfully decline, but thank you, Christina.
Okay, so we're going to take that one off.
Could I nominate Christine Brinker?
Christine, do you accept?
Sure.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second. This is Matt.
Thank you for identifying. Okay, any other nominations? Brenda, I see your hand up. I'm sorry. Did you want to say something?
No, I was trying to get my dog to settle down.
Okay. All right, so we have 2 nominations on the floor. Any others? Yeah. Going once? Twice? Okay. Motion on the floor, moved by Steve Ward, seconded by Marcy Brown for Carson as vice chair. Give me 1 second. Okay, so Brenda, how do you vote?
This is for vice chair for.
This is vice chair for
which one?
Carson Green.
No.
Okay, Carson?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Cheryl?
Yes.
Okay, Christine?
Yes.
Yes. Dane?
No.
Jeff?
Yes.
Kanji?
Yes.
Okay, Marcy?
Yes.
Matt?
No.
And Steve?
Yes.
So motion 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Motion passes 7-3. Therefore, the second nomination fails. Okay. Carson Green is the vice chair.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you guys.
Welcome
for stepping
aboard,
up.
everybody.
You got through the meeting.
Great. So the next meeting, Steve will run that. And meanwhile, I'll put together those questions that were asked internally that I could answer. I'll get those out to you tomorrow. And then we'll shoot for Friday, September 11th, summary of the questions for the both respondents. And I'll start, actually, I'll prompt you with the questions Christine had already created, as well as the ones that we've discussed tonight. So just to get you started. And I'll try and get those, probably not tomorrow, it'll probably be Tuesday before that. And then you can return those, any new questions or additions to that, back to Nancy by September 11th. All right, sound like a game plan?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
So
Cheryl, your hand is raised. Did you have something you wanted to say?
Oh, no, I must have pushed the wrong button. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I can lower it.
approach this, and so it was a good meeting, I thought. So thank you all for your participation and your time. Take care.
Great. Good night.
Thank you.
Night all. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Night, everybody.
Bye.